good, YouTube? It's Mirror Squiddy back again with another video. We all know there are a bunch of ban list videos out, but I want to talk about things that I think the other videos have not really talked about, and that is like the limitations on this ban list. First and foremost, I think like our last ban list was October. This is December, literally 2 months to get a list. This is basically the equivalent of an emergency ban list. And I think that Japan or like the corporate Konami office obviously didn't want the TCG to have a ban list right away because they wanted to sell some more cards. So I think this is what R&D, like they probably really fought really hard in order to come to a compromise with Konami Japan in order for them to deliver us an emergency ban list. And I think a lot of people are looking past that. They think it's just like a ban list where like, oh yeah, they have free reign. They didn't hit the Tearlaments. They didn't hit this. They didn't hit that. But no, I think R&D actually did a really, really good job. They tried to hit as much as they could in order to whittle down tiers, but it's probably Japan that said, hey, you guys can't hit Tearlaments yet. We want to sell some more cards. We want to sell some more Shizu cards, so on and so forth. So I think that's what happened. Yeah, really quickly, I think obviously Mystic Mine is the all-star of this ban list. Like this card just had to go originally. I'm not sure. I have no idea why it did not get hit originally, but I think Konami R&D finally came to their senses and said, okay, we're gonna ban this card. Finally, there's just so many stalemates with this card. Like you're losing the deck out. People activate this. You're forced to build deck build around it. You have to play. You have to main deck bad cards like Tearlaments Heartbeat, High Rate Draw, like previously you even had to play like Cosmic Cyclone just because of this card was in the metagame, and your deck was just so much worse because you had to play bricks and cards that were just dead against certain matchups in order to beat mine. And on top of that, like half the time you might not even have the out for mine, or like they would just like deck you out with a second copy. There's obviously the Mystic Mine Burn deck, which is running around, and I think that might have been the final nail in the coffin. Konami seeing like, okay, this deck is just really, really annoying. There's a mirror match, feature match in the last YCS Dortmund, which I don't know why, but hey, anything to help ban Mystic Mine, right? So I'm so glad they finally got rid of this card. Even if the ban list just had this, it would have been amazing. Curious is obviously, everyone was kind of raging. They're like, oh, yeah, Curious is not playable anymore. It's played in the old Tearlaments. Why'd you guys hit this? Blah, blah, blah. You guys don't know what you're doing. But I think, like, again, we have to think about the limitations, okay? Like, the ban list, a lot of times, it's also based on, like, Konami business. How can they push sales in addition to the integrity of the game? So I think like Curious, obviously it should be banned. It's just such a broken card. It allows you to search your deck, allows you to foolish any card, which is just crazy. You know, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Graveyard is a second hand. So being able to search your deck for essentially any card, and then on top of that, you get to mill 3, and then when it dies, you get to add it back any card from your graveyard. It's just so much. Like even leaving it on the board previous format was just so hard for certain decks to get rid of, like Sprite, without giving your opponent an advantage. And I just think like this card eventually it's going to get broken. Anytime that it is playable, it's always broken, so it's not a good thing. I think your extra deck toolbox should never have cards that are this busted. Cards in the same vein like how Summon Sorceress. This is Curious is like very, very similar. So I'm glad they hit this. I think they did the best they could and probably realized, okay, this card is probably going to be broken as well. So we're going to, given the limitations of what we can do with the ban list, we're going to hit this as we're not allowed to hit any tier cards. So I think it's a totally valid hit, and I'm glad they did that. Obviously, we would love to see some more hits, on Tearlaments in the next list, but this is like, we have to bear in mind, this is an E-ban list that Konami R&D probably fought for in order to make possible. And then moving on, okay, the limited cards, I think this is the most telling part that Konami only had so much power that they could do with this ban list, is that the only limited card is Herald of Orange Light. Obviously, there are a bunch of tier cards that we could come to mind that should definitely be limited, if not banned. Cards like Tearlaments, Havness, Pearl Rhino, those cards should definitely be limited at the very least, because like they're so powerful. Especially Havness, it could end the game on the spot on turn 0, like on your opponent's turn. Like if you go first and your opponent Havness is you, they could win on the spot, which is just crazy. But I think again, Japan was like, hey, you guys cannot hit any Tearlaments. We want to sell the Ishizu cards. Here's the best you can do. You can hit Orange Light. And because Orange Light is already limited on the OCG list, this kind of telegraphs. They're like, okay, you guys can do this. You can do what we did. However, Orange Light doesn't really matter. It doesn't really impact the deck that much. It doesn't impact sales. But what it does do is it allows rogue decks to have a little more breathing space. Like previously when they had this with a Kelbeck or an Agito on like something like, a Beaver, Nimble Beaver, or like a Flunderies, or like any rogue deck normal summon effect, it was just game. Like they mill 5 and they go Holy with Jesus on you, they get to destroy your card as well. The game is just over. Having this at 1 means that Herald of Orange Light is effectively almost out of the game. Okay, like the difference between 1 and 3 is just so significant because their consistency. They're barely going to see this as a 1-of. Think about how many times you see Call of the Grave. Called by the Grave, yeah, you do see it sometimes, but definitely not as much as it was when it was at 3, right? So Herald is more or less the same thing. And maybe even some players will cut this card because of the fact that it's at 1, it's not really consistent. It's like more, it's almost like not needed. But I think it's probably good at 1 to play still, but it's just so much better now that it's at 1 than at 3, so your rogue decks can actually compete and not get blown out by this card on turn 1. Again, we already have Happiness to worry about. We don't want to deal with Herald of Orange Light on top of that. So I think it's really good. And again, they didn't hit any of the cards, so we know there's some kind of restriction on the C-ban list of what they can hit. And then Recital Starling, this is kind of an interesting one. Obviously, it doesn't really matter at all. It's nice that birds get another tool to play with because right now with 1 Recital Starling, you couldn't really do much. But now with 2, you can do the loop again. You can make F0, I believe, really easily. Utopic Future, again, with Warbler plus like a name. It pairs really, really well. And obviously, Fractal send one of the birds and then Warbler back, Cobalt, for example. Obviously not very good with these Shizu cards in the format, but again, it's nice that they're giving some options to the other decks. They probably realize, okay, we can bring this back, just give them a bit more utility, give them a little bit more toys. It's always good to have like different things for people to try in the ban list, I think, like being able to test different decks, being able to play different engines. Maybe the bird engine will resurface, who knows, in like a future deck. Maybe there's Wing Beast support, right? So this is kind of cool that they did that. It doesn't really matter at all. As long as the Samorglink is banned, that was the one that was broken because it interacted with the deck. Again, some repeating theme in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that interacting with the deck seems to be broken and always bannable. So yeah, hopefully they stop bringing those cards like that. And then at the 3-ofs, this is the interesting part. So we have Tellarknight Ptolemaeus. This card I almost felt like was too powerful to ever come back, but I'm surprised they did it. Basically, this card allows any 2 level 4 monsters, so any rank 4, to become any rank 5, non-number rank 5, of course, which is super, super broken. Back in the day, it was really broken in the Pendulum format because you could actually use 3 level 4s to detach on your turn and overlay for Cyber Dragon Infinity, which was just an Omni Negate. Back in the day, it was harder to get Omni Negates, and that was just like pretty broken. So that got banned. It was also used, I think, for making Azathoth Elder Entity on your opponent's turn in the OCG. I'm pretty sure they had that for quite a bit as well. So yeah, it was a really, really busted card. I'm super surprised they brought it back. But one thing to note is that you see a lot of tier hate on this unlimited section, and that's probably because they realized that they could not hit the tier card. So they're like, okay, the best thing we can do to compromise is bring back floodgates that are actually good against tiers and do the best we can as a band-aid fix, given the limitations imposed on us by, Konami corporate, by like the higher ups. They didn't want us to hit the tiers, so this is what we can do. And it really says this, I think just like seeing a list of cards that are actually good against tiers go to 3, as well as the limited list, like nothing else being hit on the tiers, and this being an emergency ban list. Again, the last ban list we got before this was October, 2 months, guys. And then before that was May, which is like almost like a 5-month difference between ban lists. So this is definitely an E-ban list. And Tellarknight Ptolemaeus is also anti-tier because you can overlay for this in main phase 2 using Stellar Knight Diamond, which prevents cards from being sent from the deck to the graveyard, so it stops milling. So again, this is also pseudo anti-Tearlaments, if you think about it. Okay, and the other thing is it's kind of also good for Tearlaments because technically they could play this. I don't think they will because it takes so many extra deck slots. So if you do want to play like a rank 5, there are some options, probably like the one that comes to mind is Constellar Pleiades. That one you can overlay on this. But you also have to play Diamond, so Diamond's decent against Mirror Match. But the fact that Dweller's still a thing, I think you would just rather make Dweller half the time. So it's probably not worth playing this, because you would have to play Ptolemaeus, Diamond, and then maybe Constellar Pleiades. Because, if you want to do it against like certain matchups like Sprite, it's pretty good as a bounce. So that was like 3 slots, which I don't think the deck has space for. I'm surprised they didn't ban Abyss Dweller, because that would have been nice, because it's just like one of the broken cards in the mirror match. So if they got rid of Abyss Dweller, and then this would have probably taken its spot potentially. This or Giant Hand, I think, like any other rank 4 that's decently interactive. But again, this is really good for decks that can play rank 4s, because of the fact that you can make Diamond. It's really, really versatile, obviously being able to be used during either player's turn. And yeah, I just think it's really, really cool that this came back. It's a lot more room for decks to experiment with. I think it could potentially get rebanned, because this puts a restriction on them printing good rank 5s in the future. Like any quick play rank 5, this could just be really overpowered. So we'll see what happens. D Fissure is really like D Fissure macro. Those are always broken cards. We don't really want to see them at 3, but it's whatever. It's like we already have Skill Drain at 3. I think the game is just fast enough. We're in a spot where like these cards can be maximized, and then the decks that are hurt against them just have to draw the out. I suppose we're at that level, and you know it sucks, but this is a compromise to Tearlaments being the best deck. This is the best they could do, so I'm glad they're actually trying to do something. Same thing with Metaverse. It doesn't matter now that mine's banned. It's like, thank goodness. I think this card might actually be good in the Labyrinth deck. I'm not sure, though. And then Tanky at 3, it's like, all right, this is kind of nice. You know, Beast Warriors haven't really been doing anything. It's kind of a boost to the Bird deck as well. Obviously, Tri-Brigades are not very playable right now, being out power crept, super out power crept, and also like the Shizu cards doing a lot of damage to that deck. So, yeah, overall, I think, again, like it's probably Japan that said, you guys can't hit the Tearlaments, you guys can't do a lot. Here's what you can do. And R&D, I think they did a really good job with what they could do, honestly. Like even just mine being banned would have been amazing. And I'm surprised that people were complaining, because I think this is a really good ban list. But yeah, that's about it. I'm gonna make some more videos, see what we can do with like these different cards, see if we can play around. So definitely leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this ban list below. Let me know how you felt, and rate, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.